Year 494. One arrow, one dead camel, a poem, and then blood. That single moment, it started a 40-year war. 40 years. An entire generation of people grew up knowing nothing but violence because of a camel. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dude, come on. A 40-year war over a dead camel? That seems excessive. But here's the thing, and this is why I wanted to make this video. This story, this ridiculous, almost comical story about a dead camel, it's actually one of the key elements to understanding how one of the world's most influential movements began. And more importantly, it reveals something crucial about how societies collapse and how they get rebuilt from the ground up. All right, so let me set the scene for you. We're in pre-Islamic Arabia. This is the world that Islam was born into. Now, look at this map. You've got these two massive empires grinding against each other like tectonic plates. Byzantium over here, Persia over here. At the edges of Arabia, you've got these big powers setting the tone. In the north, you have Arab federates, the Ghassanids allied with Byzantium, and here, the Lakhmids with the Persians. In the south, you have Yemen over here, and beside Yemen, Persian vessels like Mahra and Azad Oman. But right here, in the middle, you have these tribes, hundreds of them, each fiercely independent, each ready to fight over honor, territory, or resources. And here's the crucial part. There was no one in charge, no empire, no government, no legal system, no way to resolve disputes peacefully, which means every minor conflict had the potential to spiral into decades of violence. Which brings us back to that camel. So here's what happened. This is Qurayesh ibn Rabi'a, the chief of the Banu Tughlib. He sees this she-camel grazing on what he considers his protected pasture. Now, to understand why this matters, you have to understand something about tribal society. Imagine you're the head of a neighborhood, where your reputation is literally your survival mechanism. There's no police, no courts, no 911 you can call. Your tribe's reputation for toughness, that's your only protection against raiders, rivals, and anyone who might want to take your stuff. So when someone's camel grazes on your land without permission, it's not just trespassing. It's a direct challenge to your authority. And in a world where weakness gets you killed, you can't let that slide. Qurayesh shoots the camel dead. To him, it's simple math. My land, my rules. Case closed. But here's what he doesn't realize. He just lit the fuse on a powder keg. This camel, it belonged to a woman named Al Basus. And she was living under the protection of another tribe, the Banu Bakr. In this honor-based society, harming someone under your protection is like, imagine someone vandalizing your house while you watch through the window, doing nothing. You'd look weak. And looking weak gets people killed. Al Basus does what any skilled modern influencer would do. She goes viral. She composes this devastating poem that essentially calls out the Banu Bakr as cowards for letting this happen to someone under their protection. Think about how a single tweet can destroy someone's reputation in hours. Now imagine that, but your reputation determines whether your entire tribe lives or dies. That's the pressure Jassas ibn Murrah, the Banu Bakr chief, is facing. Jassas has two choices: accept the humiliation and watch his tribe lose credibility forever, or respond with violence and risk starting a war. Tribal honor doesn't really give you a third option. So he kills Qurayesh. One dead camel becomes one dead chief. And that single act of revenge triggers the War of Al Basus. 40 years of bloodshed between two tribes. But here's what makes this story really important. This wasn't unusual. This was just Tuesday in pre-Islamic Arabia. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is a fascinating story about tribal warfare, but what does this have to do with Islam? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Because while the interior of Arabia was locked in these endless blood feuds like the Basus War, something completely different was happening in this city called Mecca, ringed by rocky hills, guarding this cube called the Kaaba. So while everyone else was busy killing each other over camels and honor, a tribe called the Qurayesh started handling things differently. They chose diplomacy over blood feuds. It was the mid-6th century when this savvy organizer from the Qurayesh, named Qusay ibn Kilab, consolidated the three things that mattered most in Mecca. The Kaaba, that's the big black cube that pilgrims came to visit, the Zamzam well, the only reliable water source, and the council house, where all the big decisions got made. And he did this not through violence, but through arranging marriages and diplomacy. As historian W. Montgomery Watt put it, the Quraysh did not seize Mecca by violence. They secured it through intermarriage, alliances, and diplomacy. Now, why was this important? Well, Mecca was already a destination before any of this happened. Long before the Quraysh takeover, tribes from across Arabia were making pilgrimages to the Kaaba during the sacred months. They'd come to worship, settle disputes, and, crucially, to trade. You had these massive fairs at places like Ukaz and Dul Majaz. Religion brought the tribes together, but commerce kept them coming back. So by taking control of Mecca, the Quraysh inherited this system. But they were about to turn it into something much, much bigger. This is where our story takes a dramatic turn. Enter Abraha, the Christian governor of Yemen, backed by the powerful Aksumite Empire. Abraha looked at Mecca and saw a problem. All these Arab tribes were traveling hundreds of miles to worship at this pagan shrine, completely ignoring his beautiful new cathedral in Sana'a. His solution? Destroy the Kaaba and force everyone to come to his church instead. Year 570. Abraha marched north with an army that included war elephants, hence why 570 CE became known as the Year of the Elephant. This was supposed to be Mecca's destruction. Instead, it became the moment that made Mecca unstoppable. Abraha's army was mysteriously defeated before reaching the city. The Quran mentions this in Surat al-Fil, attributing it to divine intervention involving birds dropping stones. But here's what's really important from a historical perspective. The failed attack made the Kaaba famous across all of Arabia. Suddenly, this wasn't just another shrine. This was the shrine that couldn't be destroyed. The Quraysh had just won the marketing campaign of the century without spending a single dinar. Okay, so now, with Mecca as the undisputed pilgrimage center, the Quraysh did something genius. They built Arabia's first comprehensive logistics network. They called it the Ilaf system. And it was basically a series of safe passage treaties with every major tribe and ruler from Syria down to Yemen. Think about what they were moving here. Caravans worth fortunes in gold, spices, and silk. The Quraysh basically leveraged their position as guardians of the Kaaba to broker these deals. Tribes respected the sanctity of Mecca, so they respected Meccan diplomats. As the chronicler Ibn Ishaq noted, the Quraysh used their position as guardians of the Kaaba to secure alliances north with the Ghassanids and south with Himyar, so that their caravans could travel unmolested in winter and summer. Winter routes went south to Yemen for spices and luxury goods. Summer routes went north to Byzantine Syria for gold and manufactured items. The Quraysh had created Arabia's first truly international trade network. But wait, it gets better. They didn't just trade. They became Arabia's first investment bankers. Think about the scale we're talking about here. A single caravan could include hundreds or even thousands of camels, carrying goods worth more than most people would see in a lifetime. No single merchant could afford that kind of operation. So the Quraysh created a system where wealthy families would pool their money to fund these massive expeditions. They'd sell shares in the caravan, and when it returned with profits, everyone got paid according to their investment. Montgomery Watt explained it this way. The Quraysh were not merely traders but financiers, pooling capital into large-scale caravans and distributing profits among shareholders. They basically invented the modern stock market in the late 6th century. I'm not even exaggerating.
Now, the final piece of this puzzle involves one of history's great examples of perfect timing. From 572 to 628 CE, the Byzantine and Persian empires were locked in a series of devastating wars. The traditional Silk Road routes through Syria and Iraq became war zones. Sea routes through the Red Sea became prohibitively expensive due to military disruption. Suddenly, everyone needed an alternative. And guess who had spent the last century building exactly that alternative? The Quraysh. They had already created the pilgrimage draw, the diplomatic treaties, the financial system, the logistics network. When the great powers of the day started tearing each other apart, Mecca was perfectly positioned to become the new commercial hub of the Middle East. Montgomery Watt explained it this way. The timing of Quraysh commercial expansion coincided with the deterioration of overland routes through Mesopotamia. Arabian alternatives, already under Quraysh control, became more significant. So by the late 6th century, Mecca had evolved into something unprecedented in Arabian society, a commercial oligarchy, run like a medieval corporation. 4 major clans controlled everything. Banu Umayyah ran the Syrian trade routes, Banu Makhzum provided military protection and major investment, Banu Abd Shams handled financing and diplomatic relations, Banu Hashim managed the Kaaba and pilgrimage operations. This wasn't a traditional tribal society anymore. This was a boardroom. Decisions got made in the council house, based on profit margins and market share, not blood feuds and honor codes. Now, you're probably thinking, wow, that's awesome. Things are going really well for Mecca. Yeah, about that. Here's where things started getting familiar and dark. This financial evolution bred systematic abuse. Rich clans started exploiting weaker ones with impossible contracts. The gains were massive at the top, while ordinary people were crushed. What we'd call predatory lending today, impossible interest rates, debt traps, was everyday reality for Mecca's smaller clans. Miss a payment, and you didn't just get bad credit. You became property. Meanwhile, the ultra-wealthy flaunted it. Money wasn't about survival. It was about power. So you had this contradiction, one of the richest cities in Arabia. And right outside its markets, ordinary clans sinking into poverty, trapped in cycles of debt slavery. Things got so bad that some of these smaller clans formed something called the Hilf al-Fudul, the Alliance of the Virtuous, specifically to protect merchants being cheated by Mecca's financial elites.
All right, here's the pattern. And pay attention, because it's important. Whenever wealth pools at the top, whether it's Mecca in the 6th century, France before the Revolution, or modern cities where billionaires live blocks away from people who can't pay rent, the result is always the same: instability. But the economic inequality was just the beginning. This hadn't just emptied wallets, it had emptied trust in the whole system. If the same merchants who control the Kaaba are also burying you in debt, why would you believe their sermons about honor and justice? When people stop believing the system is legitimate, they stop following its rules. That's how you get from economic exploitation to moral collapse. It wasn't separate problems. It was one disease, spreading through every part of society.
Look at the family structure. Women were treated as property. When a man died, his sons could inherit his wives like livestock. Marriage wasn't about partnership, it was about ownership. Women had no right to their ancestors' assets. The birth of a daughter was seen as a result of sin. Some families even practiced female infanticide, burying newborn girls alive because they were seen as economic burdens.
Religion was for sale. The Kaaba, built as the house of one god, was crammed with 360 idols. Each tribe rented space for its deity. Worship itself had become a business, and the Quraysh collected the rent. And at the bottom of the system were the enslaved. Debt could strip a man of everything: his land, his children, even his freedom. Families broken apart. People sold into bondage to repay loans they could never escape. The same clans running the caravans also ran the slave trade. Gambling, drinking, vice. Not on the fringes, but at the center of social life. Normalized. Profitable. Woven into Mecca's culture.
So let's step back and see the full picture. You have political chaos, no central authority, endless tribal warfare. You have extreme economic inequality in the middle of a boom that only benefits a tiny elite. And you have complete social and moral breakdown, touching every aspect of life. This was Mecca on the eve of Islam. Rich, powerful, but hollow. A society where inequality, corruption, and despair had eaten through the very fabric of faith. Historians call this a revolutionary situation, when problems are so deep and so interconnected that the system can't fix them from within. At that point, you get one of two outcomes: total collapse or complete transformation. If you wanted to fix 6th century Arabia, where would you even start? You'd need something comprehensive enough to tackle political chaos, economic exploitation, and moral breakdown, all at the same time. Not a band-aid, a complete system replacement. And in 610 CE, that transformation arrived.
Islam didn't emerge in a vacuum. It emerged as the inevitable response to a society that had reached its breaking point. A complete revolutionary system that rebuilt politics, economics, and society from the ground up. And here's why this matters today. We're seeing some eerily similar patterns. Political polarization that makes compromise impossible. Wealth inequality at levels not seen in human history. Social institutions that people have stopped trusting. The specific details are different, but the underlying dynamics, those are exactly the same. The reason I wanted to tell you this story is because it shows us something crucial. Revolutionary movements don't happen randomly. They happen when the problems of a system outgrow its ability to solve them. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that when systems become unsustainable, they don't just limp along forever. They either collapse or they get replaced by something entirely new. Thanks for watching. In our next episode, we will see why Islam spread like no other ideology ever before, how the others responded to it, and how it became what it is today. If you want to learn the parts of history